Hi, good morning. Morning. Matt, I'm gonna make you a co-host so you can help let people in while I'm sharing my screen if anyone comes in.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Thanks for folks who joined. We're gonna wait a couple minutes. There's a couple more folks who registered, and then we'll get started with our presentation. All right. Thanks again, everyone, for joining. Looks like we have a critical mass, so we'll go ahead and get started with the presentation. My name is May Kate Campbell. I'm a member of the Clean Water team here at the Basin Program, and I'm joined by my colleague, Matt.
Hi, I'm Matt Vaughn. Nice to see you all.
And we both manage the land conservation program. So the intention of today is to provide a brief presentation that goes over some of the key details of the request for proposals. And then we'll leave a lot of time for questions at the end of the presentation to hear about, potential project ideas or any questions you or your organization might have in approaching this funding opportunity. The presentation is really brief, so my preference is to hold questions until the end, if that works for everyone, and appreciate you being here today. I'm going to pull up my slides and kick things off. All right, is that looking correct? Great, thank you for the nod. All right, so the funding for this program is primarily to support purchases of a fee simple interest or conservation easement of parcels in the Lake Champlain watershed to benefit clean water and healthy ecosystems. So supporting and development costs leading to these purchases are also eligible, along with a variety of costs to support, management or increase public access once an acquisition has taken place. Eligible applicants include Vermont and New York municipalities, 501(c)(3) nonprofits, or organizations who are partnering with a 501(c) nonprofit who will serve as the contracting entity for the project. For this particular funding opportunity, work must take place in the U.S. portion of the Lake Champlain watershed, and applying organizations or project partners must have the legal authority to hold property rights in fee simple interest or conservation rights and interests under applicable state laws. So we have about $3.4 million available for this opportunity this year, and we will be accepting proposals for funding ranging from $100,000 up to $3 million. Some of the requirements of this grant program are brought to us by the US EPA. There are some restrictions on deed and easement language that would need to be included, including certain types of land management development or construction activities. And there's also requirements on acceptable manners of resale or disposition of parcels. So I would encourage you, if you are interested in this opportunity, to review that required EPA language in detail before submitting an application. The full language is provided as a link in the request for proposals. One important thing to note is that this is a reimbursement-based program. So your organization would need to have the funds available to cover any acquisition or easement costs. And then once documentation is provided to the Basin program to confirm that that transaction has gone through, we will provide reimbursement for the costs incurred. And happy to take questions about that at the end.
And let me just
Go
add to
ahead,
that,
Matt.
May-Kate, if I
Mhm.
can. May-Kate mentioned that you need to have the funds available. That is true, just available at the time of purchase, just meaning that you can, set something up with a short-term loan or some other mechanism to make what can be a large purchase. But from our end, it would be reimbursement based, as May-Kate said. And
Correct. So
we've had,
we have had a couple organizations that have secured bridge loans in order to have the funds available for closing and then receive reimbursement.
yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Matt, for the additional detail there. And then any purchase and sale agreements should reflect those reimbursement requirements we just discussed and will need to be reviewed by the new EPIC attorney prior to that transaction going through. Similar requirements for conservation easements, Basin program staff need to review those and ensure the required EPA language and all the required documents that are listed in the request for proposals are included before the easement goes through. And improved recreational access is an eligible cost under this grant program. But since the primary purpose of this grant program is, the acquisition or conservation of land, that co-benefit of recreational access costs should be proportional to the goals of the award. There's a couple other requirements that primarily come into play if your grant is awarded, but I think it's helpful to just provide a brief overview of them now so that you can have them in mind as you are approaching writing a proposal. So any costs that will be subcontracted, and that will be over $15,000. So if you're going to subcontract maybe the development of a stewardship management plan or an environmental site assessment, if that cost is expected to be $15,000 or more, you will need to follow procurement requirements consistent with federal funding guidelines to secure a contractor for that work. You will need to be able to provide receipts for costs for professional services or supplies that are over $1,000. And any project that is going to be developing a stewardship management plan as part of grant funded work will need to develop a quality assurance project plan. We do have a template available. A lot of projects in this grant category are doing really similar things, doing a baseline documentation report or an environmental site assessment phase one to gather information and then use that information to write a stewardship management plan. So we have a QAP template available for that type of work. However, if you're doing anything kind of outside of the bounds of what's been typical through this program so far, you would need to work with Basin program staff to develop a new QAP. And
Can I
then,
jump in? Can I jump in there, May-Kate?
yep.
So yeah, May-Kate mentioned a template. And just to clarify, in this case, it's actually like an already approved QAP. So it's in place that you can use the QAP that's already been approved. If you're familiar, you worked with us, it wouldn't even need to go through that approval process. It's already in place. You just need to do kind of an appendix to that where you fill out a few pages about your project and then agree to follow the approved QAP in this case. So it's much less onerous than other projects. I see ISMAR on here, for example, familiar with our process. It wouldn't be as involved as something that you've done before.
And that appendix would need to be approved by Basin program staff before any of that data gathering or analysis work could begin. And then to apply for this grant program, your organization needs to have an active UEI and be registered in sam.gov, and you need to hold insurance throughout the project. If you don't have either of those in place at the time of the award, it could delay the potential start date for your project. So just something to keep in mind as you're approaching a potential application. Another requirement for this grant program is the Build America, Buy America requirements. So this applies to any awards through this program that are greater than or equal to $250,000. And that's the total value of the award from the Basin program, not necessarily the value of any like subcontracting award for construction. But if you receive an award that's greater than $250,000 and you have any aspects of the project that you're going to be doing construction to improve public access or, make a parking lot or something like that. Um, any iron, steel, or manufactured product and construction materials used in the project must be produced in the US, and awardees will need to certify compliance with this requirement. So this is something that we have some resources available to help folks if you're in this boat once awarded. But again, just want to make sure everyone's aware of these requirements as you're approaching an application. Anything to add on that, Matt?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, great. Um, some tips for a successful application, making clear connections to opportunities for action. That's the Basin Programs Management Plan. In your application, really articulating how this project will advance the goals of the management plan to support clean water and healthy ecosystems, will be important for a successful application. Letters of support are really helpful kind of across the board for Basin Program applications. So if you have any identified partners coming in, or even a letter of support from a landowner, indicating that they're supportive of this work to be undertaken, will be great for evaluation. Non-federal match is not a requirement of this grant program, but is certainly viewed favorably in evaluating kind of the effectiveness of the budget and, noting that additional resources can be leveraged. And there's a variety of types of match that are eligible to be counted as match for this program. So that can be in-kind match or, additional non-federal funds that are supporting a purchase or easement acquisition. Partnerships are viewed favorably, making sure that you're clearly articulating the steps that you'll be taking in this project and the deliverables that will be provided to the Basin program to demonstrate that the work has been completed. And as always, double check your math before submitting your application. So some key dates. We have this window of application open for a long time to allow folks to develop a proposal and to kind of go through the steps of estimating costs as well. So the proposals for this program will not be due to the Basin program until December 9th. We expect to announce award decisions in February 2027. And at the time that award decisions are announced, if you are selected for award, we will provide you a due date for a project work plan that allows you to go back through your application, incorporate any feedback that you receive from the confidential peer review committee that reviews these proposals, kind of make any tweaks to your budget that are needed once you know that the award is happening. And then we anticipate that projects can start in May 2027. So once we receive your work plan and all the other required documents on insurance and things like that, then we can move this forward towards a contract. And that's when work can begin once a contract is signed between your organization and New EPIC. And then finally, project completion and final report due date. So all the work to be completed under this grant program would need to happen by the end of December 2029. And that is everything we had. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we'll take any questions. Hi, Mary.
Hi, Kate, and thank you and Matt for that overview. It was really helpful. And I'm sorry if you did clarify this, but I was wondering when you mentioned the new EPA or language requirements for deeds, is that new this round or the same as past rounds?
That's a good question. It's the same as past rounds.
Oh,
So
okay,
same as information that was provided if you applied or looked at this program previously.
great, thanks.
Yeah, thank you. Great. I think Jenna and then Kate.
Thank you for having this. And this is probably a very simplistic question, but the project start date of May of next year. So I understand this reimbursement, any work done prior to May then won't be covered, but is it okay that we're starting to do those landowner conversations, major donor outreach now? Um,
Yeah,
Even though
so
that's obviously well
projects
before.
start and end for us is relative to any work that is going to be reimbursed by the grant. So kind of any work that your organization is not seeking reimbursement for to kind of prepare for the grant funded portion of the project, you can certainly get started on your own time frame.
Okay,
I
sounds
will
good.
caveat that that work, that kind of supporting work to develop a project, cannot be included as match, however. So only any hours or other funds that the project is leveraging that come into play once a contract is in place can be counted as match.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right, Kate.
Yeah, and we can get into more details with you later about this exact situation. But say you're working with one landowner, like 1,000 acres. Half of it's going to be owned by a town, half of it's going to be owned by the state. The state acquisition isn't eligible, but if we're securing other funds to conserve that land that's going to the state, is there any way that any of the land that's going to the state could be used as match or any of the costs associated with the conservation of the land going to the state used as match? Because it is kind of one big whole project, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
as long as the matching funds are coming from a non-federal source, then that would be eligible as match to your basin program funded portion of the project. And Matt, if you want to
Yeah,
elaborate.
that's true, but I'll also add so non-federal and eligible to be used as match. We've had cases where if folks are using state funds, for example, they may be non-federal, but they may have been applied as match in another context that the applicants weren't aware of. So we've run into that before. So if it is a grant and it's a non-federal source, just check with your grantor to make sure that it's eligible to be used as match in this case. And then if there's something where there's non-federal, I'm sorry, excuse me, if there are federal funds or something in kind, you can mention that in the proposal, and that will work. That will be favorable in your proposal, but it just wouldn't be counted as actual non-federal match. Just be beneficial in other ways.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, Hayden.
Hi. Um, I wanted some clarity on the valuation of the parcels. Would an acquisition of multiple parcels require a Yellow Book standard appraisal, or would a standard use PEP appraisal be sufficient?
We actually don't have requirements through this program about a specific type of appraisal. You need to be able to provide a cost justification in your proposal and in your work plan if awarded. And the more documentation you have to back that up, the stronger the proposal will be. But we don't have requirements about the specific type of appraisal.
Okay, great. And then are there specific regions within the watershed that are would be considered maybe more critical for the funds, or is it kind of dependent on the project characteristics?
It's dependent on the project characteristics because, some of the goals of the project are both for water quality improvement and habitat protection. So as long as you can kind of justify the strength of the particular proposal you're making and tie it to the basin programs management plan, then your proposal can, be strong in that way. So certainly depends on the specific parcel you have in mind.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, and I'll just add, part of the work as an applicant is to justify or to make the case for the strength of the work in the proposal. So, just like any grant opportunity, you're going to want to make the case for why this will be a strong benefit to water quality improvement or to native habitat protection based on the location and the goals of the project.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. Great questions, folks. Any other questions? Hayden again.
So going back to the QAP requirement,
Mhm.
at what stage would it sounds like we would be filling out the QAP once the agreement is in place between the applicant and you guys. Do I have that right?
It's a little bit up to you. If you are charging staff time to develop that QAP, then that could not happen until a contract is in place. If you would like to kind of have the QAP ready to go once the project starts and your organization is okay with incurring those costs and not seeking reimbursement for that personnel time, then we could work with you to develop the QAP while the other pieces of the project are going through the contracting process.
Okay. And then if it's a situation where the applicant is actual municipality, but there's a nonprofit partner like a Trust for Public Land, who I work for, involved, I would assume that the QAP would need to then be prepared by the municipality and not the project partner. Do I have that right?
It could be prepared by the project partner as long as all parties who will be involved in data collection are aware of, included in and agree to follow the QAP.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we've seen different models where, a lot of cases with this program, the grantee will be hiring a consulting firm to do part of the work, to do a management plan or something like that, stewardship plan, and they may want to wait for that group to be on board to help them develop the brief QAP appendix. In other cases, they want to just fill it out and then have put that in the RFP that the consultant has to follow these QAP requirements. And again, we have this generic approved QAP that you can see. It's in the RFP materials. You can download it and see what it looks like. And so far, everyone who's received awards through this program has been happy to follow that generic QAP. So we wrote it like flexibly enough that should cover most situations that are eligible through this program. And then the appendix really, and if you're curious, we can send you some of the approved appendices that we've done. They're really brief and straightforward, just saying what are the data sources we're going to be using, what are the goals of the project. And then again, you'd be agreeing to follow everything in the generic QAP, which really is about keeping documenting data quality, and how you're going to be choosing your data sources and things like that most people would, or most consultants would be comfortable doing.
Okay. And then do you have examples of template? I'm assuming there must be template EPA restrictions that are part of the deed, that you had referenced in the slide deck. Is that something that we could view before submitting the application?
Yes, that language is included in the RFP. I can
Okay.
probably grab the link and drop it in the chat as well. And it is a template in the sense that it'll ask you to fill out the award number, if awarded once you're under contract with new EPIC and that type of thing.
And its primary purpose is a notice of grant to be attached to the deed to say that here's where the funds came from to purchase this parcel. Here's the purpose in perpetuity, and it'll also attach the work plan with new EPIC and the Basin program, which will have anything additional to clarify, like if there's going to be any parking area developed or trail maintenance. All those types of uses will be clarified in the work plan, and that will be in the deed itself as part of the notice of grant.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
We have a question on the chat, in the chat.
Yes, so from the chat, looks like are municipal conservation commissions eligible to make a request? Could you mention the types of organizations that are eligible? We did cover this earlier. I'm happy to go over it again. But essentially any organization that's a 501c3 nonprofit that meets the insurance requirements and is registered in sam.gov to be able to receive federal funds is eligible for this program. And if you have any questions about that eligibility, or if it's something that your organization doesn't meet yet, but could meet by the time of application, we're happy to kind of help with those steps to get there. Great. Mary.
Thanks again. Do you have any insights into, say, next year for this program, if it will be offered around the same level, or for those of us who might have projects that are a little farther out?
Yeah, so the funds supporting this land conservation program for the Basin program came through the Infrastructure Investments and Job Act. So we received over 5 years of funding, individual years contributions for these programs that we've been running for the past couple years. We have received our final allocation. So we're not certain that we will be offering this program again next year. It depends on the proposals received this year and the amount of funding that's awarded.
Okay,
So that
that
there's
helps.
just to, yeah, to clarify, there's no plan to reissue this RFP for this specific purpose. But it is possible if we have remaining funds. It's certainly possible. But I would not, if there's a good project, I would not count on that on another round of this.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm seeing Chris, and then I will go to a question in the chat after that.
Thanks. And I think that gets me halfway to the question that was in the back of my mind, and that is the stability of the federal funding. Given the inherent instability of a lot of federal funding these days, it seems like because this money came from a certain piece of legislation that's already been delivered, it's relatively secure, given if we're going to be leveraging this, taking out a loan essentially, and we want to make sure that we can pay that loan back.
Matt, you want to respond to that one?
Sure. I can say that we don't expect any issues with the stability of this funding. There was some time when new executive orders came out with this administration that caused some delays, but things were restored rather quickly. And we've been able to continue our work, and we have assurances from the EPA that things will be stable with this funding. So nothing is 100% certain in any case, but we feel comfortable moving forward with the RFP and that there won't be issues.
Right.
Mhm.
Great. And then we have a question in the chat. Are there particular things you would be looking for in a letter of support from a potential seller at the application stage? There's no specific requirements for those letter of support. I would say just, general, like I'm aware of and, supportive of this application and agree to move forward if awarded, would be kind of a great summary. Great. I did grab a link to that required EPA deed and easement language that I just put in the chat. This is also available in the RFP. It's linked on page 4. Any further questions?
I'll just add, you can always reach out to us if you have questions as you're preparing a proposal.
Yes. I just put my email address in the chat. It's in the RFP as well. If you reach out to either me or Matt, we will work together to get back to your question and, track down any information we might need to respond to you. All right, last call for questions. Okay, great. Thank you all for being here. Thank you for your interest in this grant program. We will post the slides from this presentation online, and please feel free to reach out if you have further questions.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Bye.